Hey class, today we'll be discussing managing employee relations. This presentation was made by Cody Merlin, William Kennedy, Justin Montgomery, and myself, Caleb Cheng. Thank you for joining as we discuss. Hope you learned something from it, and we'll get started from here. Now, being an HR manager, one of the most important key questions you can really ask yourself while in this role is why employee relation practices are so important. Many of these include improvement of productivity. Now, productivity is also affected by two factors known as their ability and whether an employee can perform, and two, their attitude and their willingness to complete a job that is at task. Improving both of these factors will also improve the quality work of these employees and what they do in their positions. Now, diving into a bit more detail about employee relations is that it ensures implementation of the organizational strategies. It also ensures that the organization goals and their strategies are properly communicated within the company. This also reduces employment costs and also helps employees grow and develop as they go throughout their journey within this corporation that they have joined. Now that we have a brief understanding about employee relations, it's time to get into the Maple Leaf Shoe Limited case and addressing their situation about employee relations. Within this case, it looks over three different issues surrounding four different employees. One is Paul, which involves a case around fraud, Joanne and Natalie, which involves a sexual harassment case, and finally Max, who is using unprofessional use of the internet and the company's computer systems. The first issue to be addressed would be the issue that arose while Joanne, the clerk, had run into a coworker named Natalie. Their conversation consisted of Natalie explaining why she has moved from her former position at the company's head office in Wilmington, Ontario. She went on to say that the reason she had moved was due to her refusal of sexual advances that her boss has pushed onto her. After threatening to have her dismissed, they settled on her moving to a new location. As of course, Joanne felt this was very wrong, she began to get in touch with the Human Rights Commission, and even went as far as contacting the media in both cities. This represents a form of upward communication or grapevine communication when information arises through natural people-to-people interactions with human desires to make friends and interact with each other. This interaction is precisely that, where Joanne's desire is to interact with Natalie, a coworker, resulted in her gaining information about her reason for transferring to their office. Now, I believe that the issue here has to do with the original company policy, quote unquote, what happens in the company stays within this company. This can make employees feel trapped, scared, and hard to confront this as an issue that potentially violates their rights. Brittany's solution to this is would be to address this as she is not the boss who is inflicted by these sexual advances, but to seek that her new employee is emotionally and mentally stable to continue working, and also ensures that her company policy slogan definitely changes within this corporation. As explained, this can be very detrimental to employee relations and what employee relations really stand by in a positive manner. Having a company slogan such as what happens in the company stays within the company is not a right way you want to represent your corporation. The second issue to be dealt with arose when one of the very good employees named Max was discovered using his company laptop and internet access after hours for personal use. Now, personal use would not be an issue, but only for this time Max was caught watching hours of pornographic material on his computer. In this situation, they value Max as a longtime employee, um, but this would also be a difficult and, of course, embarrassing situation to deal with on both ends. First of all, they would have to look into the rules and restrictions for the usage of the provided laptop and internet connection, even after hours. I believe to counter this from happening again with any employees, corrective discipline is in order for sure. This is when you reform the offender, deter others from similar actions to maintain consistent, effective group standards. In order to do this, we believe Brittany should put a restriction on the use of these devices and services for after hours. This could simply be by locking them from a master device between the hours closed and open, if that is what it takes immediately and, of course, to end to the situation. Um, just because Max is valued as a great employee and has worked there for several years, it would not be a right for him to be disciplined in any other way, but to be terminated as a consequence. Finally, the third issue is to be dealt with would have to do with the warehouse supervisor, Paul. He is again a valued employee at Maple Leaf Shoe Company and was knowledgeable of this scheme that two equivalents to him were pulling off in Toronto and Montreal. This problem, where they were seeking out information from a manufacturing company overseas about Maple Leaf shoes, in return, they would be able to buy into the company at a very good deal. This defends a branch of security fraud and various other infractions. As the other two employees were fired, it was brought to their attention that Paul and another supervisor would be questioned. As Paul was aware of this fraud scandal, they questioned him in this situation, and we believe that Paul had the right to report the fraudulent act that was going or within the rest of the company. As he was invited to take part in it, he was then involved being aware of the actions and incentive to participate anyways. To tie into these three cases, we'd like to look into the issue of the internet. And the internet's policy can be tied in with the factors that we believe coincides and with corrective discipline. The policy should state that the head office is tracking the employee's internet use, which in turn should be enough to keep them on track and for them to avoid using inappropriate sites while at work. As for personal use, since clearly that was abused by their trusted employee Max, as it is stated above, um, putting then even just restrictions ahead of blocking it altogether after hours would protect the company from embarrassment like this. Blocking genres of websites that are not appropriate in the workplace and would then not be allowed on their work computers within the internet access from home. In turn, forcing them, if they want to proceed with this kind of conduct, to use with their own personal device separately. Now the question, should Paul be dismissed? As a group, we fully agree and believe that Paul should be dismissed of his position after he admitted to knowing the fraudulent acts of his colleagues and what they were committing of these locations. Although he wasn't necessarily the culprit, he was still well aware and still let it slide. Um, Still, by simply being aware of the situation and what it was at stake, he still kept his mouth closed. He is not acting in the best interest of the company he works for and should be loyal to. And as an employee, he has a duty to uphold honest and fair ethics in place for business. By not doing this, he is committing employee misconduct, which is grounds for immediate dismissal. Within our course of Human Resource Management in our textbook, it states on page 520 that there are 4 classes of misconduct identified, which include unfaithful service to the employer, misconduct of the general nature, which includes theft and fraud or dishonesty, and willful disobedience of reasonable and lawful order. In this case, Paul's actions fall into almost every single one of these categories that were stated within this sentence. His unfaithful services, such as competition against the employer or serious conflict of interest, are classified as immediate grounds for dismissal. Now, I'd like to extend off this by stating that we think reasonable notice for Paul would be greater than the minimum notice period. As outlined in the textbook, a justifiable notice can be dependent on a variety of factors, and is up to the courts to decide the set amount of notice employee gets if the employee takes the situation that far or is unhappy with the notice given to them by the employer. Since this depends on age, length of service, salary, occupational status, other employment opportunities of similar pay and duties, and much more, we would take this into consideration. Since Paul was in upper management, had a long career of service within the company, performed and contributed positively, consistently to the company's operations, and wasn't the immediate culprit in the product scandal, but instead was just aware of it going on, we would give him more than the minimum notice and extend to approximately a month and a half of notice. This allows him to find similar employment at other workplaces, finish off warehouse deals he has going on during his employment, and let him, of course, come in terms with the situation and enable him to recover and bounce back from his setback. If we were put in Paul's situation, of course, we can see where it can be tempting to participate in a scheme such as the ones his fellow supervisors have come up with. They did this as they feel they are underpaid for the amount of work that they do and that their wage is not keeping up with the inflation within the economy. We acknowledge and understand why they are doing this, but as the saying goes, don't bite the hand that feeds you. In Paul's situation, being a valued employee can go a long way within a corporation, of course. To throw away his personal reputation, risk the jail time, is essentially not worth it at the end of the day. The money problem can be resolved by reevaluating your pay and, of course, asking for a raise when due, or even possibly, if you are not happy you can go seek another job somewhere else. In our opinion, we would like to take the high road and notify the senior management of what is going on within the company. This is especially when there is a scheme happening and it is happening in all types of cities, and it can get very messy when we're not aware of that. And that is it for employee relations for human resources. We'd like to thank you for watching and taking time out of your day to learn with us, and hopefully we can hear some great responses from our questions. Again, thanks for watching and have a great day.